About a week ago, I put a video on here debating the merits of whether or not Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys should be suspended by the National Football League. And at that time, I said I felt like he should be suspended for 2 games because there was enough of a trend, of a pattern of destructive behavior that indicated he needed some type of message sent because he couldn't control himself and he couldn't exercise better judgment for himself. And somebody needed to step in and send a message now before he got himself into an even worse situation and potentially seriously hurt himself, his teammates, the Cowboys organization, the NFL as a whole. So I was okay with the 2 games. You know, I'm sure some Cowboys fans don't want to hear that. Some other people don't want to hear that. Some other people maybe thought that was too lenient. I thought 2 games was a nice, safe place. Because ultimately, even with a year-long domestic violence investigation, there had been no arrest, there had been no charges filed. So to me, that is something where you can make an argument that somebody could just make wild accusations, whether they're true or not, is not in this case for me to judge. But just because somebody levies an accusation doesn't automatically make somebody guilty. We, in theory, are supposed to be a civilization, or at least an American society, that believes in the premise of innocent until proven guilty, but we know how flawed that thinking is, even though that should be kind of the ultimate law of the land. But when you look at the pulling down of the top, being involved in a bar fight, getting a ticket for driving 100 in a 70-mile-an-hour zone, shopping at weed shops, all this other stuff, at some point in time, enough is enough. And at some point in time, he clearly didn't care enough to make better decisions. A decision needed to be made for him. So I wasn't surprised that the NFL was going to suspend him. And you could imagine I wasn't surprised at all when the NFL did ultimately suspend him on Friday. However, you could imagine my complete and utter amazement when he was given a suspension of 6 games. That's almost 40% of the damn 2017 regular season. 6 games! They suspended the dude for 6 games, almost 40% of the regular season. Not because of the other stuff that I talked about, but the thing that was just an accusation that has been investigated by the police for an extended period of time to where they felt comfortable enough where they didn't need to press any charges, did not need to make any arrests. Yet here's the NFL playing themselves, ultimately Roger Goodell, judge, jury, and executioner, and saying, whatever the law says doesn't matter. We're going to do our own investigation, come up with our own conclusions, and we're going to suspend the guy for 6 fucking games. What the fuck? The same NFL that a year ago suspended Josh Brown for 1 game after an arrest for a domestic violence charge, which ultimately was later dropped, but then shortly after, you got the information released that Josh Brown had admitted to police he had previously abused his wife. Josh Brown, the kicker for the New York Giants, got 1 freaking game. Ezekiel Elliott gets 6, and he's never been arrested or had any charges filed on him. After the police have done a lengthy investigation to where they have determined that there are no grounds to file charges, not enough evidence, the NFL says, we don't give a shit, we're going to suspend him for 40% of the season. This is incredibly reckless to me and inconsistent. When Ray Rice initially got popped off for the elevator crap before the video came out, because ultimately that made it so much worse, right? He got 2 games. 2 games. Think about that. 2 games. Josh Brown actually gets arrested and charged with domestic violence before it's later dropped. He gets 1 game. 1 game. And in this particular matter, Ezekiel Elliott gets 6 games for something he's never even been charged with. I'm glad the real business world primarily doesn't function this way, to where you could lose 40% of your annual salary for something you haven't even been charged with, just because of an investigation. What type of steaming pile of horse shit is this? And then to top it all off, this penalty is so incredibly excessive because not only is he losing the game salary for those 6 games, potentially, even if he does appeal, or even let's say he gets the appeal and it's successful and it goes down to 4 games, or he goes to an arbitrator who knocks it down to 4 games or 3, you're still talking about losing up to a quarter of your yearly salary, a quarter of the season. To me, this is unfairly punishing a player, unfairly punishing a team, and unfairly, frankly, punishing your television partners for taking one of the biggest stars off of the league's marquee team without a real justification, in my opinion, to do so. Look, I'm not saying domestic violence isn't serious. It is. I'm not saying that if somebody gets arrested for it, charged with it, that they shouldn't have faced some type of potential penalty for that. I'm not saying that at all, even though I still believe you should have to be found guilty of something or have to plead guilty to something before you're suspended. It is what it is. I understand the public relations reality of the National Football League, but in this particular case, the guy hasn't even been arrested. The guy hasn't even been freaking charged, and we're going to suspend him for almost 40% of the season to where not only is he losing close to $1 million in actual salary, but based off of the loss of playing time and the potential loss of incentives and kickers in his rookie contract, you could be talking about losing about an additional $8 million. Where is the justice for taking close to $10 million away from a 22-year-old kid when he wasn't even arrested and charged, let alone convicted, for the thing that you were suspending him for? Unbelievable. Like I said, 2 games I thought was one thing because something needed to be done based off of the pattern of behavior. But ultimately, the suspension here for Ezekiel Elliott, the official reason given is because of the domestic violence incident, not the other pattern of behavior. For something ultimately, again, he was not even arrested or charged with, let alone convicted. We need to start a hashtag. Hashtag free Zeke. Free Zeke. Free Zeke. Because this is bullshit. What is so different about Josh Brown and Ezekiel Elliott, where the kicker gets 1 game and the running back gets 6? Is it because one was a kicker and the other one was a running back? Was it other potential factors? Because it clearly can't be based off of the merits of the case, because Josh Brown was actually arrested and actually had documentation indicating he admitted to previous abuse. Ezekiel Elliott hasn't admitted to previous abuse. He has been arrested and charged with nothing. Yet he gets 5 more games than Josh fucking Brown. Who thinks this is just? Who thinks this is anything other than the freaking Führer of the NFL, Roger Goodell? Seek Goodell! That's exactly what the fuck it is. I don't care if anybody likes me saying that or not. This fucking abuse of power Nazi sitting there and being inconsistent in the punishments he weighs out. Ray Rice, accused of knocking out his girlfriend. That's worth 2 games. Oh, there's public outlash. But you be the kicker for the New York Giants and actually get arrested for domestic violence. That's 1 game. And you better learn your lesson before we might give you 2 games. But if you're Ezekiel Elliott and the police indicate that there is not enough evidence to press charges, fuck it, we're giving you 6 games. Stick it in your tailpipe and smoke it. What a bunch of bullshit. Free Zeke. Free Zeke. Because this is ridiculous.